Here's Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of Rink Wide Vancouver. And, they've got a big game to cover because the Abbotsford Canucks can advance to the third round of the Calder Cup playoffs. More on that in a second. How are you, Jeff?
I'm good. Heard you talking about Whistler Golf there. I sent Al a quick note, just wishing him a fine opening day, and also said, we'll see you soon.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
which reminds, I was supposed to get in touch with Al and plan our date. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Very subtle. Go. Well done. Well done. Before we get into the coaching situation and the Abby Canucks, and this would be terrific work from Manny Malhotra and his charges, Patrick Allvin met fans at that season ticket holder event last night. And Jeff, you were saying you were struck by the full-throated endorsement of JT Miller, an endorsement that Elias Pettersson has not received from his fellow Swede, the GM.
Well, and we heard the same thing from Rick Tocchet at his final avail at the end of the year as well. Nothing bad to say about JT. Love JT as a player. The guy that is no longer here continues to get the endorsement from coaching or past coaches and management. Well, the guy that is here doesn't seem to get that same sort of backing, at least not publicly. So it is an interesting dynamic, to say the very least. Patrick Allvin, careful in his statements to the season ticket members, didn't want to go too far down the road, but again, pulled back more of the curtain here, I think, to give people a sense of just sort of how deep-seated this rift was between these two guys. And, I think we're getting a clearer picture now of sort of how invested JT Miller was in winning. And Patrick Allvin pointed out the fact that he's 32, and he recognized that, or at least he thought JT probably recognized, he wouldn't have that many more plate appearances to take a cut at the Stanley Cup. And Elias Pettersson, obviously a little bit younger, and in theory should have a longer career. But this picture, I think, that's emerged of JT Miller as this alpha dog that was win at all costs. And I think some of the frustration was born when he would get up in Elias Pettersson's face. He wouldn't get any sort of reaction or response. And I think that probably drove JT Miller even wilder. That, not only are you not competing at my level, but you're not responding. And, JT would like to solve everything with a fist fight, right? Like, that's it. JT's, that's the cloth he's cut from. And so I do think that was at some level. Now, were there some flashpoints along the way? It sounds like there were. But I do think the root cause here was that JT just couldn't get a response out of Elias Pettersson, and that drove him that much further, drove a wedge that much further between these two guys. So what's done is done, but interesting that, it continues to come up even behind sort of closed doors, obviously in the world with cameras on phones, even things that are behind closed doors still get out, as this one did at the season ticket event.
So, Jeff, hearing what we have heard from Allvin and from Tocchet and Rutherford to some degree as well, do you believe if they get the right offer for Elias, they want to make this trade? Do you believe that they don't necessarily believe in Elias and would love to get a healthy, good trade for them, move him on, rid themselves?
Boy, we're talking perfect world stuff here, and I just think with the term that's left on that contract, that this idea of the perfect trade and getting maximum return in the way of bodies that would come in and possibly replace this player, I have trouble getting there, quite frankly. Like, I think if you're getting off that contract, you're doing it at pennies on the dollar. Team is basically taking on that contract, but I don't think they're giving up a ton of assets in. And I know the cap's going up, and more teams would, in theory, have some space there. But I don't know. And then the flip side of that is, as you watch these playoffs now, it's becoming the spring of superstardom, whether it's Mikko Rantanen or it's McDavid and Draisaitl doing their thing here, without knowing what the return ultimately would be. But I think in terms of warm bodies, the return would be pretty low. There's a part of me that thinks that the Canucks are going to bet on Elias Pettersson bouncing back, and instead of chasing another elite player, hoping they can rehabilitate the one that they've got here. But in saying all of that, one thing to get regular season Elias Pettersson back, guys, we saw in the playoffs last year against Edmonton that he disappeared even further than he had down the stretch. And so there is a lasting concern for me in And it has to be baby steps, and he can't get to the playoffs without having a big regular season. But I still have some concerns when I see how physical the playoffs are, when I see how guys are digging in and win at all costs. I need to see some of that from Elias Pettersson. And we didn't see much, if any, of that over the course of this past regular season, but even more so going back to last year's playoffs.
So they octuple down on their love of JT Miller, the departed player, when they could be building Pettersson up. Why haven't they, even for a second, and they've had their criticism, and that's fine to have the criticism. But I think you can do both. We joke about the parenting sandwich around here, deliver the two good things around the bad thing. Like, how about a little bit of parenting sandwich on Elias Pettersson and say one unbelievably flattering thing about, honestly, Jeff, they can't speak a great word about the guy. And A, it's just weird. B, don't you get a better player out of knowing how emotional Elias Pettersson is? Don't you get a better player out of Elias Pettersson if you start to build him up a little bit rather than tear him down?
Hey, I hear you loud and clear, and you've got more parenting experience than any of us, certainly on this panel. So I listen when I hear you speak. But you may have answered your own question, quite frankly, in some of that. And maybe the scar tissue runs pretty deep here. I mean, we've heard stories, like a lot of people on the outside say, why don't Daniel and Henrik just sit down with them and solve everything? And yet there are stories too that either they've tried that or that notion has been rejected to some degree by the player in question here. So look, I think if they had solutions, they would have gone down that road, and it is baffling, to say the very least.
Manifest it or speak it into existence, even if you don't even fully believe it.
Well, so maybe they have a different parenting style than you, Blake. Maybe they believe that's what this player
School of Hard Knocks only.
Maybe they tried the soft approach or the complimentary approach earlier in his tenure here, earlier in their tenure here, and that they're down to brass tacks and utterly frustrated because nobody, including the Sedins, can reach him.
Earlier in the tenure, he got them 100 points, though. Go back to that then.
Sure. I just, Jeff brings up the Sedin thing, and, that's just got to be a red flag, right? With what we know of Hank and Daniel, they are incredible people. I don't know why you wouldn't want to spend time around. They're hard workers. They're intelligent. They have fantastic people skills. What is preventing him from just being right there under their wing, Jeff? It's that, to me, as much as anything that went on with JT Miller this year, as much as anything that happened with in terms of decline of performance, that to me is the head scratcher of them all. That they're his fellow Swedes, these Hall of Fame NHL players, seemingly, he doesn't want to cozy up to and have them as mentors.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with that, but I also was struck by Quinn Hughes' final answer on Media Day when somebody asked him about Elias coming to spend time with him in the summer, and it sounded like Quinn wanted to wash his hands of that idea in a hurry. And so it's not just management, it's not just the player development Hall of Famers, his own captain. And it does make me wonder, guys, and this is clear speculation, but from a guy that's around the room and can see things and pick up the vibe, and we know that it wasn't a great season in terms of interacting with Elias Pettersson from a player media standpoint, and I do wonder if some of, is that the Elias Pettersson in that locker room? Maybe that's how he dealt and responded to a bunch of his teammates as well. Is he that sort of cut off from the rest of the guys? And again, speculation, I understand that, but there's enough sort of red flags here to make you wonder, we've said so many times, and how many times did we talk about Rick Tocchet not able to reach Elias Pettersson on various levels, and maybe it goes beyond just the coach. Maybe it's across the board in that, at some point, it can't be what can everybody else do for this guy. It has to be the guy himself. And so, I think it's going to be a summer of spending time in the gym, but there's obviously going to have to be some soul searching here in this offseason as well.
Do you believe Alvin when he said young players, like he said plural, thought that it would come easy? Do you think, I mean, we all interpret that as Pettersson, but I mean, is it Höglander he's talking about? Who else do you think he's talking about?
Well, they're not a particularly young team. I mean, first and foremost, like
younger.
So younger than Patrick Alvin, certainly, yes. But but that always, whenever hockey speak for, everybody thinks every guy in the league is young until they're not, and so that part makes it a little more difficult to sort of suss out. But look, Alvin said this before that a lot of these guys, they came to training camp prepared to play till April, where it really gets difficult in May and June. And he sort of made that point before. So I don't know if that was a continuation of sort of that these guys have to have a change in their mindset, that it's not about showing up from September to April. It's about showing up in September to be in the physical condition that's going to allow you to excel into May and ultimately, and hopefully June at some point for this group. So not totally sure where he's going with that. He also made it pretty clear that this wasn't just this past season or even last year in the 50-win season, that this was something that had been going on for a while, which, again, makes it that much more mysterious about why somebody somewhere along the line couldn't nip it in the bud and get this moving in the right direction, but ultimately they couldn't. It's water under the bridge now. JT doesn't play here, and we'll see if Elias does when the new season rolls around in the fall.
You might be working to June this year.
Höglander was named the fittest player, so I don't think it's Höglander he's speaking of.
Yeah, true. Mm-hmm. You might be working till June because the Abby Canucks might be working to June. On rink-wide Vancouver, you'll be working here too. What are the chances here?
He's here next week for you.
Yeah, exactly. We'll put him to work. What do you think the chances are of a deep run here? They need to show the ability to put teams away. They've sort of done that in the mini-series, but now that you're into best of 5 and soon to be best of 7 if they advance, as many teams in the NHL have shown us, that put-away game is an important skill to be learned. We'll see if the Abby Canucks have got it.
Yeah, and they missed an opportunity in Game 2 against Tucson, but their best game of the playoffs start to finish was Game 3 when their season was on the line and shut out the Roadrunners 5-0. Artur Silovs was terrific. And then, this series against Coachella Valley has had moments. Like, they were good over the final 40 minutes the other night, but how a team at this stage of the season can go 15 minutes off the hop without a shot on goal. Now, they had shot attempts, so it wasn't like Coachella Valley controlled the puck and Abbotsford never spent any time in the offensive zone, but still, you had lost in overtime. This was now back on your turf. You wanted to sort of assert yourself, and it did take them a while to get going. And once they did, I like the way that they defended in the third period. I know they gave up the only goal of the night the other night, but Abbotsford was full value for the 3-1 victory. And it really has been a team effort. Like 12 different guys have scored goals now, 6 games into the playoffs. We've talked about the fact that you'd love it on the backs of some of the true NHL prospects, but at the AHL level, like this is a really good team. And obviously, Phil DiGiuseppe and Sammy Blais and Jujhar Khaira. I mean, these guys all have lots of NHL experience. They're applying it now. Nate Smith played 14 games in the Arizona Coyotes system, but for the most part has been a minor leaguer, but a really good minor leaguer. And so, there's a lot to like here. And now they've got 2 cracks at eliminating Coachella Valley. So I certainly like the fact that they've put themselves back in the driver's seat here. Artur Silovs responded to getting the hook in Game 2 and bounced back in a big way, particularly early in the hockey game the other night. So lots of reasons to like this team, lots of reasons to believe. That said, some injury problems that they've had to overcome. But they've got this depth down there that allows them to plug and play a bunch of guys. And look, they went through it all regular season when players were getting called up to the Vancouver Canucks, that Manny would just look at the next guy and, hey, you're getting a chance in the top 6 tonight. And for the most part, guys would respond. And even on defense, they go 9-10 deep down there at that level. So they're set up well for success. Now, long playoff run? Who knows? I will say, and before you get too excited about the idea of a best of 7, there is still another best of 5 before they get to the best of 7.
Oh, my God. I thought it went to best of 7.
Final. No, the division final. And Colorado is already through, took care of San Jose. Colorado got a bye in the first round and then made fairly short work of San Jose in the second round. So Colorado's awaiting the winner of Abbotsford and Coachella Valley. And guys, the Colorado Eagles are led by a now 35-year-old Jason Magna. So he, when we talk about NHL veterans and guys that are still going strong, Jason Magna is one of their team leaders in scoring. And yes, the Canucks farm hands would see a guy that was a Canuck farm hand for a few years in Utica, if they do, in fact, prevail here against Coachella Valley.
Let me get this straight. There's 5 rounds to these playoffs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jeff, do you like Jason Magna on right wing with Hank and Danny, or do you prefer Michael Chaput there?
Yeah, I think I've moved past the idea of Jason Magna with the Twins at this stage.
I can remember driving to the airport one day to pick up Carmen and listening to the two of you guys discuss Willie Desjardins moving Jason Magna with Hank and Danny for that night's game. And I'm sitting there going, you have got to be kidding me that we have reached this stage of experimentation.
I hope you still feel sorry for us. That was, that was tough.
Was Jack Skilly unavailable that night? Was he?
I believe he might have been. Yeah, he was hurt. Yeah. No, big bodied right shot. Skilly. Jeff, has this week informed anything for you on the head coaching search?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe clouded it a little bit with the name Marco Sturm added to the mix. And look, Marco Sturm has done everything to put himself in position to get a National Hockey League head coaching job. Like, this is nothing against Marco Sturm, but like the parallels between Marco Sturm and Manny Malhotra are wild. I mean, distinguished NHL careers, slightly different player type, obviously, but step back. They've been assistant coaches in the National Hockey League. They've dropped back to be head coaches at the American Hockey League level. Marco Sturm has had some success coaching the German national team, coached them to the silver medal at the Olympics in 2018. Like, this guy's got a decorated coaching career now. All of that said, I have trouble in my mind putting him in front of Manny Malhotra at this stage. And if the separator is a couple more years of head coaching at the American Hockey League level, I'd be surprised if that's the differentiator at this stage. And I know you guys touched on it briefly, and I don't think this is going to hold Marco Sturm back from getting a head coaching job at the NHL, but I would love to know and hope that he would be asked about how his team scored just 1 goal in 2 playoff games this spring at the American Hockey League level and bowed out as early as they did. Like, that's, I'm sure he wasn't expecting that, but as the higher seed, you could only milk 1 goal out of your team in 2 games with home ice advantage. So a little bit of a red flag. Therefore, if he was to be the guy coming into Vancouver for a team that just went through this season where they were offensively challenged and so many guys couldn't score, is that necessarily the right fit? So, look, I think the Canucks are doing the right thing here. They're sort of establishing their long list, and they'll get it down to a handful of legit candidates that they'll bring in for person-to-person interviews. I thought the dominoes might fall a little quicker around the league, guys. And I know that Anaheim's filled its gap, but I thought when Mike Sullivan got hired by the Rangers that other teams might get into more of a scramble mode to make sure that they didn't miss out on their guy. And so I'm not sure what is going to get the dominoes falling, but there are still a ton of vacancies, and who knows? I mean, there, I suppose, could still be 1 or 2 more based on what's happening around the NHL playoffs. But no, to answer the question there, Matt, I don't think that I'm any closer to believing that the Canucks have really zeroed in on one guy, their guy, at this stage of the process.
Great stuff. Well, Jeff, you're busy at work again this weekend with this Abbotsford game. We wish you the best on that, and look forward to seeing what the weekend brings for the Abby Canucks. Could be into the 3rd round of the Calder Cup playoffs by the time we talk on Monday.
Well, I'm hoping it brings Sunday off, quite frankly.
Yes, it'd be great if they won tonight for you.
Now, look, we're committed. We'll work Sunday if they're working Sunday, but they get 2 cracks at it here. Get it done. They're at home here. They've got Coachella Valley on the ropes. So, game 4 on Friday night, and then game 5, if need be, on Sunday.